Hello, and welcome to Ask John. This is a show that was conceived with the idea that I'm John Reicher. It was conceived with the idea that I would have guests on, and those guests would ask me questions, and that's why I called it Ask John. I thought that people would ask me financial questions, as I am a financial advisor. But as it turned out, I enjoy asking people questions, and I always have very interesting guests. And I end up asking them questions. And today is, I was going to say it was no exception. No, today is another exception where I'm going to ask all the questions. My guest today is Don Long. Don is a Pearl Harbor survivor. Don was born and raised in Minnesota. He joined the Navy, and while he was in the Navy, he went to the University of Minnesota, and then afterwards he went to San Diego State University, where he got a master's in education, and then he taught high school in the San Diego area for about 15 years. Then he was a skipper on a charter fishing boat for another 10 years. Later he came to Napa, where his family was residing, and he is residing in Napa still.
Yes.
And he came over today to tell us his story. And I've heard Don's story several times, and I don't mind hearing it again. Don, he's very articulate about his experiences, so I know that you're going to enjoy this. Did I mention, Don, how old are you? Do you mind if I ask how old you are?
No, not at all. I was let's see, what's today, the 15th? In 1 week, I'll be halfway between 97 and 98.
I said you were 93, but no.
Well,
wow, I underestimated you. You don't look a day over 89. Yeah.
Over 93. Very good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I'm going to let you talk a little bit about your experiences at Pearl Harbor. But first, tell me, what is this Pearl Harbor Survivors Association?
Okay. The Pearl Harbor Survivors Association, the emblem that's on the screen, was formed, I think it was, what, 56, 58, something like that,
it says
when there were lots of them.
Yeah.
Today, the national organization is, quote, dissolved. There are several local organizations around. I belong to the one in San Diego, California. To my knowledge, I'm not certain that there is one in this area anymore. But in your area, in this Upper Bay area, that I also belong to the sons and daughters of the Pearl Harbor survivors. We meet at Concord monthly, and the members of that organization are people who were very closely involved with Pearl Harbor, but it's usually through their parents. We also have a couple of members that were actually at Pearl Harbor on that day in 1941 as young children. One of the ladies was 4 years old, and just recently I saw that one of the men members, that he showed me an ID badge that his family had made for him while at Pearl Harbor when he was, I think he was 2 or 3. But anyway, he's in a little cute sailor suit, and that's his, quote, official ID, military ID.
Excellent.
So those are the two, that's how the organization is right now.
How many actual survivors are left now?
The last report that I heard, and accuracy I certainly don't know for sure, but was less than 300. But whether the validity of the statement, I won't vouch for.
Yeah. Well, tell me a little bit about your experience. We have some slides here we can look at. This is a
okay,
picture of the island. I think it's probably not the best
very
picture.
Good. But okay. The map there is not very clear on Hawaii, but I was not at Pearl Harbor proper. I was at Kaneohe, and if you notice, it's at the north side of the island. The bay itself was a naval air station. Now we're talking about December, and I think it opened in June of 1941. Lots of construction still going on. The base had squadrons of PBYs at the base that I was at.
PBY, what's a PBY?
Okay, PBY is that seaplane that The PBY is the amphibious seaplane that was the, I'll say, the mainstay of naval aviation patrols.
And we
at
have
that
we have a
time.
picture of that coming up.
Yes, there's a picture a little bit later.
Okay.
But PBY Catalina, manufactured by, not Convair, was Consolidated at that time, Consolidated Aircraft Company in not Minneapolis, San Diego.
San Diego, okay.
San Diego, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So this picture shows a little bit what the island looked like, and
Yes.
beautiful, beautiful.
A recent shot, and that is the Pali is, of course, now 4-lane going across there, and Kaneohe, the bay is this little circular spot in the upper part of the screen there, and that's where I was sitting out in one of the airplanes on that bay on December 7th, 1941.
Aha. So you were enjoying yourself, though. What a delightful.
sorry?
You must have been enjoying yourself. What a delightful place to be. How old were you?
Oh, yeah. I had, let's see, I had just rolled 20. Yeah, it was a real fine life for a young fellow.
Yeah, and there's a picture later on of a guy standing there with a surfboard, and
Oh, yes.
that could have been you. Were you surfing and
on
having a good
Waikiki
time?
Beach. Well, any little farm kid from Minnesota getting to go to Hawaii is a pretty big thing.
Yeah.
Sure was then.
What a sweet deal. And then you had duty that day.
Yes.
Now, here's a picture of what are we calling this?
Yes,
So,
yeah, that is the type of aircraft that we had in the squadron, and one of them was anchored. Not one of them, there were 3 or 4 of them anchored in the bay that day, and I was in one of those airplanes on the bay by myself as a guard duty.
So you were servicing that aircraft, or it was just
there was
guard
no
duty?
servicing required.
I see.
Part of what I understand we were doing, keep in mind, I'm a seaman. I am the lowest entity on the Navy hierarchy pole, and they didn't tell me much except do this and do that. And so I was on guard duty on that airplane, and my duties for the day were just to report anything abnormal to the shore, either by a radio or signal or Aldous lights. And for training, what we had planned is I would make contact with the people in the control tower at the airfield, and we were going to send a code back and forth with signal lamps and I'm sure we were going to do semaphore, if people ever remember anything that
I've heard of that.
with that semaphore.
Yeah,
like
sometimes
that.
you do that with flags and.
That's
yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah.
That the advantage of that militarily is you can communicate silently, and if you are in close proximity to an enemy, sometimes that's important, sometimes it's not.
Yeah.
But it was a very accepted method of communication.
Something unusual did happen that day. What was your first?
It did happen.
Yeah.
I was preparing for the day's drills, and I heard aircraft flying overhead. Certainly not uncommon at an air station, but it was a Sunday, so a little bit odd that a bunch of them were up there. I took a look, saw some formations of planes coming from behind the mountains, just assumed it was the Army Air Force. There was no the Army Air Corps, there was no Air Force then, and that they were up on some Sunday training. And so I was continuing to make preparations for my daily duties and exercises that we had planned. And the next thing I recall is that I heard explosions, looked, saw apparent bombs falling, explosions on the ground, planes burning. Some of the attacking aircraft were strafing the airplane that were parked by the hangars and near the runways, and very shortly thereafter, and by shortly I mean seconds or minutes, that they came and attacked the planes that were on the water.
So you were actually, I'm going to go back to this map, you were actually not at Pearl Harbor proper.
No.
And I've never been aware that there was another harbor there that was attacked exactly at the same time. So you had the same experience as those people in in Pearl Harbor.
Except the harbor at Kaneohe, I think, is much smaller and certainly not developed the way the other one was.
Okay, but
the other was the major military base.
They didn't. Yeah.
Yes, but that's a true statement.
You were not left unscathed. That's for sure.
I'm sorry?
You were not left unscathed.
No. Oh no. They.
So yeah.
No, from what I understand, of course, the Japanese objective was to keep aircraft on the ground, and they did a very good job of it. Very good job.
They were pretty successful. Yeah.
Yeah, we had a couple planes on patrol so that they were not damaged at that time, but just about all the other planes suffered minor, major, and serious damage.
And there was no opportunity to engage the enemy.
Not in that sense. I understand that the Air Corps, that they did get a couple of planes up, but they got shot down. And the confusion that reigned is really hard to describe. That I know that the records have indicated that there were many of our own planes shot down. There was a flight coming in from Hawaii, from the continent, from the United States, that were coming to Hawaii, and that flight was by the guys that detected the Japanese flight coming in. That's who they thought they were. They were a flight of B-17s. But then when the shooting started, I believe it definitely did happen that we shot down our own B-17s and things like that.
It happens too frequently.
Yeah, it was just tragic.
Yeah. Well, tell me about your particular experience being.
Okay, as I said, that the attacking planes then began to strafe the planes on the water. I saw the planes near me, and by near I'm saying a couple hundred yards away, that were hit and burst into flame. And the next thing I knew, they made a run in my direction. I can recall seeing little spurts of water coming up through the bottom of the airplane where the machine gun bullets hit. It wasn't long, and by that again I'm talking seconds, less than a minute, that one of the runs, they hit the wings, the gas tank. The gas tanks at that time were not self-sealing. Later on, they had self-sealing tanks to prevent exactly what happened there, but the fuel leaked out onto the water, and I think that every 5 shells or so was a tracer bullet that ignited the fuel right away, and the entire planes were engulfed in flame from the plane structure and the burning gasoline on the water almost immediately. And I was in the middle of that stuff. I managed to get to the back of the airplane at the blister, which was where you went in and out of the plane, dove into the water to get away from the fire. I did not have a life jacket on. I didn't have time to get that, although I initially started to go for one, but the plane began burning almost instantly, and I never did get it. So I had the experience of swimming through the burning water. And
you were swimming through burning water.
The burning, well,
So
the
burning
fuel
oil-
on top
oil,
of the burning
yeah,
water,
yeah,
yes.
yeah.
But it's like you see the pictures of it that I had that, quote, opportunity. It wasn't nearly as terrifying as it sometimes appears, and when I look back at it...
You had the opportunity to use the lessons that you learned.
Yes, that's what I was going to just mention,
Yeah.
is that fortunately they had given us some instruction about how to swim through burning gasoline on the top of the water, and I was able to do that, and 50, 80 feet from the plane, then there was no more fire, and I came up and took a look around to see where to go from there.
Okay, everybody wants to know. Everyone wants to know, Don, how do you swim through burning water?
Okay, well, thank you for asking. First of all, you jump in, you don't dive. And the reason there is you want to keep the flames away from your nose and face and stuff like that. That within limits, just jump, cover your face, and with a hand if it's convenient, if not too important. But when you go down, when you jump in, there's a little splash, and it makes, quote, a hole in the fire, so you could just drop through that into the water. Now the object is to swim underwater as far as you can. and now you're going to need some air. So
Were you wearing foot gear?
what's that?
Foot gear. Were you wearing shoes?
Oh
boots?
yes, I had heavy shoes, and they were very difficult for swimming. That with these heavy work boots, that while you're under the water, to come up to get some air, you get yourself in a vertical position, put your hands above your head, and then as you are surfacing, you swish the water and you fire aside. This will make another little hole in the fire. Just keep on coming up, take a gulp or two of air, go back down, and swim again. I did this 2 or 3 times before I got to the edge of the fire. You mentioned the shoes, that I didn't take them off there, but then when I did get clear of the flame and the shoes were still, they weren't causing me to sink, but they sure are awkward to swim with, that I took them off, and they're laying on the bottom of the bay someplace, I guess.
They're home for fish now, or
Yeah.
probably non-existent. So this is kind of what it looked like, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah. This is an artist's rendition, and they have the advantage that they can show many things at once. It doesn't all happen as spontaneous as it shows here, but this is the kind of thing that the guys were doing on shore to try and repel the enemy attack. In fact, I'm quite sure that this picture was meant to portray John Finn. And John received the Medal of Honor for his action that day. And John just died a year or so ago, and a ship has been named after him since. But this, what I find, me personally, about this picture is it's the only one I've seen that shows an airplane on the water that were with machine gun bullets splashing around. And that's what I saw from the planes adjacent to me. I didn't notice it. My own plane and stuff.
But that's what happened to your own plane. And
yes, that's exactly what happened.
You were under the water. You were coming up a few times and getting air and going down, and then you were clear of the fire. And then what happened?
Okay. Then I looked. When I got clear out of the immediate danger, that what should I do? The battle, the attack was still going on shore. There were some actions of repelling the enemy that similar to what you see here that I saw. That I was only a couple of 100 yards offshore, and I could see it with some detail, that I could see what was going on, and the fellows had taken machine guns and put them in swab racks. A swab rack is merely a wooden rack that held the mops, the Navy, the swabs.
Oh.
And if it would fall over by itself, but if one guy held the rack up and another guy fired the gun, there were instances of this too, as I recall it. Can he bring up this other picture here? You can do it. Okay. This is. I'm not certain if this is at Kaneohe. The PBY. Oh, you told me not to do that. The PBYs are here, but there's this airplane. I think this is an old OS-2U, and I don't think we had any. So this might be Ford Island, because over at Pearl Harbor proper and on the air station at Ford Island, basically the same thing was happening. This, I think, is Kaneohe. Oh yeah, excuse me.
Yeah.
And you see the fellows standing around. There was much confusion. What do we do?
Yeah.
The burning of the aircraft, many parts, the trailing surfaces of the wings, these airplanes did not have flaps, but the ailerons and stuff were canvas, aircraft canvas, and burned very, very readily. This aircraft dope is highly flammable, and so that's why it shows the damage to the wings, but the fuselage and stuff didn't burn quite as readily.
Here's another picture.
And this, I'm certain, this is, I think, Hangar 1 at Kaneohe, because a researcher on Hawaii, he described this to me and said, yeah, he said, this one is Kaneohe.
So all this is going on, and you're still in the water.
Oh, yeah, so I'm just watching. Okay, what to do? I saw a buoy some 400 or 500 yards away, something like that. I'm not sure how far it was, and I thought that if they would attack me, I was concerned that I might be strafed personally. That if I could get over to that buoy, and if it was constructed such that it would offer some protection, I could get under that buoy if I were attacked. I swam over to the buoy. It was nicely designed for my purposes. It was a wooden, 6 feet square, heavy base, and I still do. If I would have had to dive under that thing, I would have been protected from small gunfire, machine gun bullets and stuff.
Did you experience any gunfire while you
No,
were?
and that I want to make that very clear. At no time did I see, for me, that there was any deliberate attempt to shoot at me. I mention me because I've heard opposite stories of the guys that were on board ship over in Pearl Harbor and stuff. They said that the attacking planes came in while they're there and, strafing. Of course, they're manning guns and stuff too.
Right.
Yeah.
So is there some difference of opinion about whether they were simply going after equipment?
Oh, certainly.
Or going after people?
There's really
personnel?
very little doubt about that.
Yeah.
That their main objective was to keep all of our aircraft on the ground, so we couldn't go out and attack their carriers, because now they're one long ways from home, some 7,000 miles, I think it is, and their objective was to keep our aircraft on the ground, and they were very effective. I like this picture in that it shows this one fellow there back toward us and stuff, but he looks completely dazed, confused, don't know what's going on, and I think that pretty much describes the day for most of us there. Like I say, I was not in where I was shooting and ducking bullets like some of these guys were here. So I did not have the immediate reaction experience to fight back. I was basically trying to save my own neck till I could get ashore and fight another day. That's it. But I didn't think that far ahead, I'll tell you.
And so you took shelter behind a buoy or under a buoy, and how long were you there?
That I was at that buoy. Now, of course, all this happened moments before 8 o'clock, and there were 2 runs. Another one came an hour, 45 minutes later. I was there for about an hour and a half or 2 hours when finally the attacking planes departed and things settled down. That those, quote, in command on shore, somebody sent a boat out to look for survivors on the water, and they went around to where the planes were, and there was no one except I was on that buoy, and I stood up and just waved my arms, and the boat crew came over and picked me up. But I was extremely fortunate because the other guys, nobody else thought.
No one else in your same situation?
No,
Yeah.
they were all killed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They went down with their
So,
aircraft?
When I got aboard then that rescue boat, they took me ashore. I'm certain I looked pretty bad. I was told that when I got ashore, and I can remember somebody saying, "Long, we never thought we'd see you again." And I was very fortunate to still be alive. They took me up to sick bay. At sick bay at the hospital, they put me in a line there. Now there are many serious casualties in the area. They put a tag on me. That the tag is here someplace. And I waited for treatment for an hour, 2, 3, I don't recall how long, but eventually they came and treated me. My burns were slight, but being in water that had oil and gasoline on it, it was all black, and I suppose I looked pretty terrible, but really all it was first or second degree burns. They treated me for those burns, and I was released back to active duty that afternoon from the hospital.
What was that afternoon like?
Well, confusing.
I imagine.
Someone took charge, gathered a group of us together. We got our rifles from the Armory, ammunition, and as I recall, a party of some 15, maybe 20 of us went down to the beach near the air station there, and we set up some kind of a defense post that we were prepared to repel the invaders when they landed ashore. I feel the consensus was that the Japanese would follow up with a shore attack with a landing, and it's well recognized if they could have done it, they would have quite easily probably taken over the whole island. But from the Japanese point of view, it was a logistics problem for supplying troops that far from home that they didn't want to tackle that one. And then I've read since that they had no designs on capturing Hawaii. They just wanted to disable the fleet so that they could continue with their operations in the eastern oceans there without being bothered by the U.S. fleet, of course. Should we go fast forward for a little bit?
What do you want to do? Yeah.
Okay. Would you go back to that other one, please? Here. This
Okay.
fast forward. This is 18. I'm going to say 2016, 2015 and 16. These pictures I took this 2 years ago when I was at the 75th anniversary, and this is just a depth finder in a boat that took me out on the harbor, and in theory we went over the exact spot that I had been 75 years before that. The latitude and longitude is here, and here at showing at 45 feet there's these objects. I think that's what this indicates, and these are the remains of that plane that's down there. Now there was more than one, but this is they only found the one, and we're not really certain that I was in that one, but it's a possibility. And so on that day, 75 years later, that I was at the same spot on the water, and we had a lay, and there's a picture someplace of me putting the lay on the water here, if you can, if you want to, you know which button is there. Nope, 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 nope. Okay, skip it. Forget it. I thought it was, but maybe not. Maybe not.
It's not. Well, there you are with your
Not
surfboard.
important. But anyway,
There you
that
are
was
with
a
your
very
surfboard.
memorable moment for me to be there, on that same spot again,
Yeah.
and knowing that my shipmates, that they were still laying there.
Right.
Yeah, it's
Trying to find that. Is there something you want to look at now?
okay. Well, as far as Pearl Harbor, that sort of ended. We stayed on the beach a couple of nights. They came and fed us down there on the beach, and we spent the night there. Things slowly got back. They did get a plane in operation in a few days, and I remember of going on a flight over to Pearl Harbor and seeing the devastation over there a couple of days later. But so things slowly got back to quote, operational anyway. And they got a couple of planes going again. And then where the replacement aircraft came from, I don't know, but we did end up with planes. And well, this is about March of '42 that we went and got some new airplanes, but we had planes before that too, but where they came from, I really don't know.
This is a fairly recent photo?
I'm sorry?
Is this a fairly recent photo?
This one is, yes. I can't really tell you where it came from. Yeah, because I'm wearing these clothes, so it must be pretty recent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, same clothes.
I can't remember that.
So what are you wearing?
What?
What are you wearing?
Well, okay. Well, of course, just an ordinary jacket that I got from the honor flight group when we went to Washington a few years ago, and this is for the sons and daughters of a Pearl Harbor survivor. For people like me, we often forget our own name, so it's awful hard to remember all the other people around. So it's nice to have it, have that. This is a little off of the subject we're on, but this is in memory of the Rosie the Riveters here and the ones in this San Francisco area, that these were stationed at Richmond in the shipyards over there. And I think these girls happened to be welders. One day I was with a group and saw some of these girls, and they had these little ties, scarves, and I asked about the material. I said, because I'm going to see if I can get a tie made out of this. And one of them just jerked it off her neck and gave it to me. So I have here the names of about 6 or 8 of them that are in the local chapter here.
Nice.
They've put their names here. And incidentally, if people in this area, if they have not attended or been able to go to the Rosie the Riveter, once more, Rosie the Riveter Museum in Richmond, it's well worth the trip and stuff they have. It's open.
Okay.
Very interesting.
And then you're wearing a lei. Does that have a particular
Yes,
significance?
this is the, quote, official lei of the Sons and Daughters Pearl Harbor chapter that is in Concord. And they all each have their own. When we were in Hawaii, they were all real flower leis and stuff, but these are modern.
They're more durable.
Yeah, that's right. Little ersatz that. So that's. But it really has nothing to do with Pearl Harbor. But those of us who were involved in it, the folks back home, obviously did a marvelous job at what they were doing and permitted the war to be won. And there were many sacrifices and interesting stories. Oh, one of these girls has written a book, how she left her home on the East Coast and came out to San Diego after the war broke out to be able to get involved in one of these programs, and she did. She was a welder over at Richmond at the Kaiser shipyards, and very interesting story, very interesting indeed.
I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming on and giving us your story and giving us a chance to memorialize it.
Well, thank you.
We're recording all of this, and
feel greatly honored that I tell people this season, of course, now Pearl Harbor Day just being a week ago, that for the Ussens that were involved in Pearl Harbor, it's like Christmas must be for Santa Claus. Suddenly that everybody, the date comes to them, and there are many remembering ceremonies around, and we're truly grateful and honored that.
So today is December 15th,
I think,
and
today.
It was just a week ago that was Pearl Harbor Day.
That's correct.
And what did you do that day?
On 11/7, well, the day before, or 2 days before, the AP called me from Hawaii and asked about doing a story on me to be released on Pearl Harbor Day, and they did, and that's on the web now. And what the gist of it was is they said they wanted to follow my day to see what I was going to do that day. My plans were, and I did go, I was involved in a ceremony of the lighting of the beacon on top of Mount Diablo. This beacon is lighted each year on December 7th, and as I recall, it runs for 24 hours, and then it's turned off again until the next year. And I was getting ready to go to that ceremony, but they came to the house and took pictures of me getting dressed in the junk, and there's pictures in my house. It was very, very, very nice. A different approach that I'd ever been involved in. And it was but that day I spent in the Concord area at the ceremony regarding the lighting of the beacon, which occurs, now they're doing it about dusk when people can see the beacon.
And you're making appearances. I know that you did mention that you were interviewed on another television program some time ago, and you came to an event here in Novato called Conversations with Veterans.
Yes.
And you came to our Rotary Club a few weeks ago and gave your talk. Are you finding that you're doing more of these things? Or?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
That now I'm getting a wee bit personal on this, but as most of you are aware, that many of the servicemen, we haven't talked about this for years and years and years, but now the World War II especially, they're starting to open up This year, coming a few months down the street, is going to be the invasion of Normandy, and that's 75 years ago, and that's going to be a big issue in military circles. There will be many going back to that, and I'm trying to get involved in as much of these things as I can. A partial reason for it, or the reason for it, is I know I mentioned to you, John, that when you start talking things like this, it just sounds to me like you're tooting your own horn all the time, but people have kind of convinced me that we were present just by act of chance at an event that really affected the lives of everyone in this country. Most people have a direct relation to someone who was quite directly involved with Pearl Harbor. Any of the generation that was alive and old enough to recall things, if you ask them, where were you on December 7th, 1941, and what were you doing, it's no problem. That just comes back to them immediately, what they were doing. I can imagine. Like that. And so if I can give people any information or comfort in talking about it, yes, I do. I do attend many more, and I hope I have an opportunity on occasions to go to schools and talk with people, with students and stuff, and that's gratifying, because if there is any hope for world peace and stuff, part of it's going to be through our students.
We value
young people. No getting around it.
Yeah, we value your recent efforts, and we value your service. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. And you did mention that you have a couple of ideas for world peace. So this is your chance.
Okay, thank you. I will.
You were saying, how can we avoid another Pearl Harbor? But, well, even more than that, how can we be a more peaceful country? So first of all, you had an idea about the country, about what we can do in our country.
Yes. You mentioned avoid Pearl Harbor. The thing that we speak of among our groups is be prepared. Now, that is an awful open statement. I mean, how do we do? But for individuals, as members of our society here in the United States, what I think we should all consider is some type of universal, and I'm going to use the term military training, but I don't mean military really in that sense. I mean government training. That this training, after any, quote, ordinary regular student finishes high school, before they go on to higher education, they would serve a year in some kind of community government service. This could be the Peace Corps, it could be a local program of civic help, it could be the military, it could be anything like that. And many exceptions would certainly be allowed. That I'm not going to say everyone has to do it, because it's not applicable for anyone. But the people that I've talked to over my lifetime, that those who have had that type of experience, and I'm going to say a communal experience working with their own peers at a worthy project, and all those terms can be in quotes, but they have found it a rewarding experience for their lifetime. I mean, I know I did. I feel extremely fortunate that I have reached the tender age I have, and I think part of it is the fact of military training, modern. But so I would like to have all the people in our country give some thought to the idea of advocating a program of community government service for all. Compulsory, I mean, that's the only way it would work out. And then to get even more idealistic, I would like to think for world peace, because that's our real goal. Humanity, not just us. There's a big world around us, and
it's getting smaller all the time. We are so interconnected.
That is very true. Yeah. A possible help in that area, as I see it, would be the teaching of Esperanto. Most of you won't even know what I'm talking about when I say Esperanto, but You can ask Siri or who's the other girl? Aletha? Alexa.
Alexa, yes, Alexa.
And they
or
will
you can
tell you.
ask Google.
They
yeah.
will tell you that Esperanto is a language. It's a, quote, manufactured language by, I believe, a Dutchman some 100 and something years ago, and he took what he considered the best features of most of the modern European languages, assembled them, and came up with a language that was a composition of all of them. His goal being that worldwide, that all children will be taught Esperanto. Then, whenever they meet any other child in the United States, or young person, or adult, they can immediately, sensibly communicate with them through words. And this, I feel, would be a great deterrent to any kind of military action, and a great great step toward, well, I'll use the term brotherly love, but getting along with your neighbor and things like that. So those are the two things. One, universal military training for our country, and Esperanto for the world.
Okay. Well, keep dreaming, Don.
Yeah, I hope to. I hope to.
Keep it up. Keep it up. Well, it's so amazing to have you here. And
Oh, thank you.
Can't tell you how much I appreciate it, and we all appreciate your service.
Thank you. And this is easy to edit out the end if you want, but also that when people say, you know, how do you manage to live so long? The easiest answer is choose your parents well.
I don't think I'm going to edit that out. Don, thank you so much.
Thank you, John. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. Please come back. I'm not sure I'm going to top this one. This was wonderful.
I'm sorry?
I'm talking to my audience. I'm saying I don't think I can top this one.
You will. No strain.
Thank you so much, and tune in again.
Thank you.
Take care.